Hello and welcome to Cab Chat. This is episode 283 and I'm Jamie the Cabby and he is...
Tom the taxi driver. Hello everyone, welcome back.
And I've got to make an apology because in the last episode, or the last two episodes, I said it was episode 232 and 231. And it wasn't. It was episode 281 and 282. So I completely messed up there and put us back about 2 years. So we're actually further forward and closer to the 300th show than we actually thought we was. So, yeah, it's coming up really quickly. By the end of next week, we'll be on episode 287. Yeah. What are we going to talk about this week, Tom?
Well, it seems to be the ongoing saga, but the MaxiCab. We got invited to the Whizzan podcast, yourself and I, to kind of talk about, everything, podcasting and things like that and everything taxi. But of course, as it's kind of hot topic at the moment, the whole MaxiCab LEVC thing was kind of the subject of conversation. I feel like this is the London cab trade's equivalent of the Epstein files.
Yeah, it does seem to be that way, doesn't it? It seems to be an ongoing saga and people are pointing fingers at people for doing things that they haven't actually done and all sorts of things. So let's sort of set the record straight, yeah? I've been to see the MaxiCab twice at the motor manufacturer's place in Pimlico or in Westminster and also down at Great Suffolk Street. And I've test drove both the electric version and the hybrid version. And I've, my comments on it were quite well known because I made a YouTube video about it and said that it wasn't the taxi for me. And you've been up to Scotland, haven't you? You've been up to the factory.
Yeah, so I got invited to the factory via Dean of Whizzan. They both went there. Dean and Dave of Whizzan, they went there and just basically said, do you want to come along for a couple of days? And I'm thinking, I can't really do a couple of days. They said, you just want to come up for the day? And I thought, okay, then I've not seen this cab, and it does make sense to kind of, if I'm taxi trade focused, to kind of understand what's going into it, what's the ins and outs of it, because it's all quite easy looking at it from a glance and just going, well, that's a Ford Transit, and saying, no, I don't want anything to do with it. Or do you want to look a bit closer and understand why has it not got the turning circle, what's going into it? And yeah, whilst there, saw the whole production facilities, drove both the electric and the hybrid in the car park, and then I was able to drive the electric all the way back to the airport. So from Allied Vehicles all the way back to Glasgow Airport. So I had a real good sort of real life road test in the electric vehicle.
And what do you think of it?
I mean, because I'm still kind of processing it, right? Like when I put it up on Twitter, my first post, I'm saying like, I'm torn. I didn't want to say, like, this is amazing, let's have one, It was more like, let's have a discussion about what does the taxi actually mean. And I'm still unwrapping it now, like, because if you separate, like, let's separate it from the conditions of fitness, right? Great vehicle. If we didn't have the conditions of fitness, ideal. It's massive, it's spacious, it's comfortable, it drives well, it's perfect for the driver. A great vehicle. And then you have people comment and say, well, if you buy any new vehicle, it's going to be great. So there's that element of it as well. But, I had to really kind of get myself into a different mode of thinking and think, well, is this a kind of a good work vehicle? So yeah, all round kind of thumbs up, really. But I mean, yourself, Jamie?
I sort of liked it. And I was really comparing it to the Vito rather than the LEVC. And on that aspect, I really liked it. Would I buy one? The answer to that is no.
Right.
Because of the sort of work I do, weddings, tours and things like that, weddings, it'd be absolutely no good for whatsoever, even if it was white, because it's a van. And the tours, the people expect a traditional shaped taxi. Now, I know we can get into this argument as to what is a traditional shaped taxi, and if you watched the Whizzan podcast that we did, Dean quite rightly points out that what is an iconic shaped taxi? Because what is the icon? You know, is it the TXE? Is it the TX4? Is it the TX2? Is it the TX1? Or was it the Fairway stroke FX4, which is the model that everyone remembers as soon as you mention a London taxi? That is the model that comes into their brain. But then don't forget there was models before that, the FX3, the Austin Low Loader and things like that. So, you know, the Bercy, you know, and other vehicles.
Beardmore, a lot, you know.
You know,
if we want to go back to an iconic taxi, what about the Hummingbird taxi of 1897?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they would have, wasn't the Hummingbird the Bercy?
Bercy,
yeah. So, you know, what is the iconic vehicle? Which one is the iconic vehicle? In my mind, the iconic vehicle is the Fairway stroke FX4 because it was produced longer than any other vehicle. You know, 1959 up until 1997 is quite a long time for a vehicle to be produced. So that, to me, is the vehicle that sticks in everybody's mind as soon as you mention. It's what comes to mind when you mention a London taxi. They imagine the FX4 stroke Fairway shape. Would people feel the same about TXE? I don't know. But then picking up on your point about, you know, it drives nice, it's lovely and everything else like that about the Ford MaxiCab, it'd be interesting to compare it to the new LEVC when it comes out. Because LEVC have just announced that they are fully committed to the London taxi trade and will most definitely be producing a new vehicle.
This is kind of what's made this whole topic quite contentious, is because there's a lot of moving parts to this discussion. It's not just a new vehicle. There's lots of people talking about the conditions of fitness. Then it's beyond the conditions of fitness and the turning circle. It's like, what is an icon? Then there's also the discussion of where's LEVC in all of this. That's kind of helped exacerbate this conversation a bit further. And to give some more perspective, the podcast that we done with Wizan was actually recorded before Paul and Trevor, the UCG. So I say that because obviously listening to Paul and Trevor's conversation with the UCG, there's lots of points in there that they raised that I didn't think of. I think, oh, okay, that's a very interesting point. I wish I kind of knew that. And I myself, you know, the reason why I went to Allied, the reason why I listen to the podcast and look at all the things that are published on this is that I want to collect data and information. The sentiment when we went to Allied, amongst Wizan, myself, and of course Allied, was that no one's got any news about what LEVC are doing. So it can be a bit of a, you know, a weird place that we're in. And then of course the podcast has now gone out with the UCG, Trevor and Paul at Wizan, and they've alluded to the fact that there could be, well, and as we've now had in recent days, a statement actually from LEVC. I didn't even realise this. You've let me know of this statement. This was we're on the 5th of May, so the beginning of May. This was released, basically saying that LEVC says, this is from Taxi Point. Taxi manufacturer LEVC fully committed to London black cab market with new product plans coming in the near future.
Now, Paul Byron put out a post on Instagram saying that slightly before this article came out, I think it was on the Thursday, saying that this new taxi is going to have everything you want, like Apple CarPlay, more luggage space, a bigger boot, all the things that people have complained about the current version of the LEVC. So I think the comparison really is going to be when that eventually comes out. And also, you know, the fact that LEVC have now announced that they are going to be producing a new vehicle, is this going to sort of close the doors for the MaxiCab coming into London? Because one of the reasons why everybody was sort of saying that the MaxiCab should be allowed to be licensed in London is because there was no news from LEVC as to whether there was a new vehicle coming out or not. And with the current numbers of taxi drivers in London at the moment, can London sustain two manufacturers? I know that Allied are not dependent upon sales of vehicles into London because they are producing other disabled access vehicles.
Oh yeah, their business is far bigger than just this cab. It is ginormous. They employ 800 people. They have a 50, 60 acre site. And we were just walking from one area of the factory to the other bit. Like all the bits that go inside of their disabled vehicles conversions, they manufacture on site. They've got like, I think about 50% of the parts that go into, like, when they, let's say they take like a little Peugeot kind of boxer kind of, or small kind of, sort of Pope-mobile kind of vehicle. When they make that into like a wheelchair accessible, they about 50% of all the bits that go in it, all the metal and stuff, they have like the metal on site where they sort of stamp it out, they CNC it, they make it. It's a mad operation. So if they just went, yeah, you can't have this taxi in London, they'd be like, cool. We've got plenty of other things to be cracking on with. They're doing mini buses and everything,
Yeah. So but LEVC are obviously reliant upon the London market. Not totally nowadays, because there are people buying them around other parts of the country and also other parts of the world. But their main customer base is the London market. So if the MaxiCab was allowed into London, would that mean that LEVC would reconsider their position as to whether they would carry on producing a vehicle for the London market? Because it is a very, very small market, to be honest with you. I think less than 1,000 vehicles a year they were selling, post-pandemic. At the moment, I don't believe you can actually buy one at the moment, because the dealers are saying come back after Christmas. So for people that about them.
But there was some very interesting. If anyone listening to this hasn't listened to the full kind of conversation, definitely listen to what Paul and Trevor had to say on the Whiz and podcast, because there was some bits in there that I thought, oh, actually, that's quite important. When Trevor particularly said that London kind of sets the precedent for the rest of the country, so it's all well and good that a lot of them have said, right, let's remove our turning circles because we need like affordability options for our vehicles and that. Will our mayor, will TfL stand up to it and say, well, no, we're actually going to uphold this standard? Or do we can it really? The main sentiment, and again, I got this from Trevor some time ago, is that the turning circle itself it's not the turning circle itself that's the required. The thing with the turning circle is that it is a bar, it is a standard that the manufacturer of that vehicle has to uphold, and then by upholding that, they're then going to put in all the other provisions that make the taxi, quote, iconic. So it's not because we necessarily need a turning circle per se, because we've got electric vehicles that can change from drive into reverse quite easily and spin quite quickly, and we've got 110,000 Uber drivers who are doing 3-point turns all over the place. But yeah, it is that. So yeah, I'd say just listen to some of those really, and just get a bit more of an understanding of lie of the land really.
I think the other thing that Trevor said on the Wizam podcast that he did after us was that if the MaxiCab was licensed in London, TfL would have to review every single taxi rank in London, because some of them are positioned where they're positioned because of the turning circle. Because if someone gets in and says they want to go in the opposite directions what we're facing, we can do a U-turn and get away from there. So they would have to review the position of all taxi ranks in London, which is a bit of a worrying consequence of having that.
But I feel like I don't know when it happened, but I feel like with the LEVC and the veto anyway, the taxi ranks have sort of been designed. Some of them are too small anyway, because if you get for case in point is at the front of Liverpool Street, it's the final bay of Liverpool Street. You used to be able to fit 3 TX4s on there, whereas now it's a real squeeze to try and fit a TXE, like 3 TXEs, or you're not going to get 3 Vitos on that final portion there. So I think there's kind of a few edge cases where there already are a little bit of not the correct size. But yeah, that'd be a very good point of a U-turn there. That U-turn is done perfectly in a cab, but it would be a 3-point turn if you're any other vehicle there. And I think that's the other thing that's making it a bit more confusing, because the veto is kind of the elephant in the room here, the Mercedes veto. Because, and again, I learned it from this podcast, the idea that a a private hire vehicle is not allowed to imitate or bear resemblance to a taxi. So a private hire driver is not able to say, right, I want to get a TXE because I want to look like a taxi driver and hopefully I can get more work that way. It's protected. But the conversion angle, if you make a Ford MaxiCab, then they can just grab the private. It's not a purpose-built vehicle. It was a normal vehicle that's been adapted to be a taxi. Therefore, they can buy the original vehicle or some other sort of adaptation for a private hire.
Yep.
But
the V-Class resembles a Vito taxi, and the Nissan NV200 resembles.
And that's the thing that's really quite weird about this, because you get a lot of people that are loyal to the Vito. You get a lot of people who say, well, yeah, the Vito did it. I mean, the only thing it then has different
is the hire
to this MaxiCab. The only thing it has different to the MaxiCab, rather, is the fact they put the rear wheel steer in the back, which doesn't work anyway. Not many of them work.
Nah. I mean, to be honest, the ones I've driven worked. But, yeah, the vast majority of drivers never use it because they're scared of it breaking, to be honest, because it used to break all the time. Yeah, it is a bit of the elephant in the room, because we've been there with van-based conversions before, twice. Well, if you take both versions of the Vito, then 3 times in actual fact, because we've had the 113, the 114, and the Dynamo, which are all van-based conversions. So we've been there 3 times, but all 3 of those complied with the turning circle at point of purchase, not necessarily during their working life. I mean, the NV200, the Dynamo, accomplishes it by having a double CV joint assembly on the front, which are prone to going quite often. You'll quite often hear an NV200 doing a turning circle, and you'll hear a click, 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 click as it's doing it, where the CV joint bearings are breaking down through the stress of it.
I mean, the thing I've said at the sort of top of the show is that it's difficult because there's a lot of moving parts to this. That it's not just the shape of the vehicle, it's the conditions of fitness, etc. And what I was trying to do to really just think, right, go back to first principles thinking, what is the most important factor here? And it kind of is, I guess, it's the drivers and the not, like, as an example, and I like playing devil's advocate for a lot of these things. So, like, I put just one example. I put a picture of the VN5 van up on Twitter. And I said, if that came first, and then LEVC said, right, we're now going to make this vehicle into a taxi, I don't know, would it be the same? But then the TXE does look, I guess, quite a bit different from the VN5, and obviously they changed all the way the doors open, they changed all the back of it, so that might not be the most direct comparison. The other one I was thinking about is, let's just hypothesize a worst case scenario in the, I don't know, like, let's say when people get into a taxi out of rank, what do they want most? Do they want, I think it all circulates back to the driver, but it's difficult because we kind of are linked to the vehicle in the iconic shape. I say quote iconic because what is iconic is significant of expert driver, expert knowledge. So the second you remove the iconic shape, then could signal an erosion of standards. But then when I got in the back of the MaxiCab on the drive from Glasgow Airport to Allied, I was just in the back of a taxi. I was then there. I didn't know what it looked like once I'm sat inside of it. So then is the more important factor just having enough taxis? If there's not enough taxis at King's Cross, not enough expert knowledge drivers to pick you up, then that's the problem, really, isn't it? So I think the most important point here is whatever these manufacturers are doing, and this is a sort of a call out to LEVC as well, so it's quite important they've put this press statement out saying they're fully committed to the London market, is that they need to inspire confidence for anyone on the knowledge to come through to it. Because if, whether it's a Ford MaxiCab, whether it's an LEVC, if people are looking at this going, well, the vehicle manufacturers are pulling out, well, what chance is the knowledge sticking around? You need to have control that input of drivers coming into the trade, because that is the most important asset, and all the other things are extra to that.
Yeah. I mean, some people would argue the point that we've already lost the icon. If you're saying the vehicle is the icon, some people would argue the point that we've already lost that because, let's say, at one point in London, we had fairway taxis still running around, metro cabs running around, TX1s, TX2s, TX4s, 113 Mercedes, 114 Mercedes, in all different colours, and a lot of them with adverts all over them. So, you've had, and Asquiths as well to throw into the mix. So 8 or 9 different models running around London at the same time. And, obviously when the TXE came around, there was no fairways left on the road, but it was still TX1s and TX2s, gas converted ones still running around. So, and probably the Metro cab had probably gone by then as well. Maybe not, because there was 55 plate Metro cabs that would have gone for 12 years when the TXE first come out. So you still had an abundance of different models running around London.
I think what would be a more fruitful exercise, and again, coming back to my idea of just looking at this argument for lots of different angles and looking at like what is the key overriding factor here, would be, what if all the vehicles were the same? They were all the same color. They were all the same shape. Let's ignore the fact there's a TXE and a MaxiCab. Let's just say it was a, I don't know, because you see this in other licensing areas where they have the iconic, I don't know where it is, that has.
Well, let's take like New York, for example.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was coming at too. Yeah.
Yellow. Yeah. The problem we've got is our brand as such, we are black cabs. And every single private hire company has tried to imitate that. Addison Lee with their black Galaxies tried to imitate, the black cab effect. You look at a lot of these V-Class, nearly every single V-Class that's working in London, which we go back to because a lot of them are not licensed in London, they're all black. The vast majority of them are black, and it's because of this black cab sort of icon as such. So,
but maybe there needs to be like a more unifying feature. So as an example, when I was in New York, right, they've got about 10 or 11 different vehicles. So currently, if you wanted to get a brand new New York taxi, there's about 5 that are allowed to be licensed. But because their licensing span is only 7 years, that's the lifespan of a New York taxi, there's about, I'd say, 10, 11 different vehicles that are kind of overriding at the moment. But you see they have like the kind of the highlight, which is like roof racked to the top, and it's a yellow vehicle and it's got the medallion on front. So in some ways, they're a little bit more unified and iconic because, yeah, there's lots of different shapes and colors of lots of different shapes of the vehicle, but they're all the same color.
And they're known as yellow cabs.
Yeah, even their outer borough cabs, right? I didn't realize this. They have like their own version of suburban cabs, which are green, lime green, right? And that's a suburban cab.
Are you saying we should paint all suburban drivers' cabs lime green?
Well, funnily enough, we've got it the opposite way around, aren't we? Because we're green badge drivers for Central,
and they're
yellow badge. Yeah. So we've got basically to have green cabs. That's the way
and they've got yellow.
But it can take it in many forms, right? So I don't know if you've probably come across it, and some other people have. There's the Munich cab driver, Ralph, who's got a TXE. Well, in Munich,
cream coloured, isn't it? I think.
Yes, Munich, they have to have a creamy coloured cab. So there's people there with like Mercedes kind of saloon cars. He's decided to get a TXE. And not only that, their higher light, or the taxi light that goes on top, has this weird kind of like bar that comes out and sort of hangs. It kind of hangs like a shop sign, kind of like swing sign almost above the vehicle. But that's their identifying factor. So it doesn't matter that they've got lots of different vehicles, same colour, same type of sign. You see it with, I'm trying to think of which licensing authority of the UK which has white cars, but then they have like a purple bonnet and a purple boot.
Brighton has got white cars with like a green, it's a greeny coloured bonnet and boot.
Yep. Same kind of thing, really. And I just think that maybe a more fruitful exercise would be to have because then once you get in it, but then maybe that's a discussion later on down the line if we do lose the iconic vehicle, because for the most part we do know the LEVC is the main cab in London, and most drivers like that as the main cab, including myself.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to ask you a question. If you was in the market to buy a taxi now and you had the choice between an LEVC and the MaxiCab, what would you buy?
Right now, difficult, right? There's something else I want to raise up. So they, on one of the other podcasts, they like obviously asked knowledge students. They're like, "Oh, what cab would you buy?" And obviously, a lot of them are going, "Well, I'd buy TXC. You got to buy an iconic vehicle." And I was the same. When I got out, I wanted an iconic TX4 because there was videos about you want to drive the iconic vehicle.
But you've been
having
VC for what, 6 years now, and you've obviously come across the
7. It's going to be 8 years in
pros and cons of driving.
And I think that's it, isn't it? It's like you want whatever you have, you want what you don't have. It's always the grass is greener on the other side.
I think
if you live in a house that hasn't got a garden,
you want to go.
You look at any other house that's got a garden, you go, "Oh, that'd be nice. That'd be nice."
And when you
I'm looking at this maxi-cab, and I'm like, that's got bigger room. That's got more luggage room. That'd be nice if I take it out on a day off or whatever. But it's still, for me, it's got to be that. Again, you take it for granted. When I'm picking people up, or I get an email come through and they say, "Oh, we want to do some filming with a cab or whatever." All that's gone if I have a Ford MaxiCab. So as nice as the vehicle is, I think it's still got to be the LEVC for me.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested to see what improvements they're going to make to the LEVC to try to give us what we want. I mean, one of the nice things I found about the MaxiCab, this is a really silly thing, yeah, because I've always had a seat in the front of my TX2, TX4, both TX4s I owned, and the TX2. So if you're just going out, say like me and you jumped in the cab and we're going to go somewhere, rather than you sitting in the back and me keep looking over my shoulder to talk to you, you can jump in the front and sit in the front.
Yeah, 100%. I would, if the new vehicle had that, I would pre-order, like, if it has half the things that Paul says it's going to have, and if it had that, I mean, I'd put a pre-order down now.
Yeah.
I don't even need to see it. I'm like, cool, done.
Yeah.
Shut up and take my money.
So the MaxiCab, you do have that option of having the seat in the front, which I thought was great because they've actually...
If TfL allow it, I guess.
Well, TfL allowed it on the TX2, TX4 because you weren't allowed to use it for passenger use, but you could use it for private use. So, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't really want someone sitting in the front with me after 35 years of driving a cab with people with that petition separating us. So I'm quite happy for them to sit in the back, and that front seat only to be used for personal use as such. I just think it's a great option to have because the vehicle is so expensive nowadays that a lot of cab drivers, where years ago they might have had the cab and just used it as a cab, that was it. You're using it for personal use sometimes as well now.
Yeah, literally. And I think I've always got to go out in the other half's car, and then you're like, all right, this is kind of annoying. And then, you've got other bits in the car and you like run out of boot space or whatever. And you're like, it'd be nice to be able to just jump in the cab. But
but they're restricted to the back. So you'd still opt for the LEVC. I would still opt for the LEVC. We've both been accused of promoting the MaxiCab, which is not what we're doing. We've been discussing the pros and cons of allowing another vehicle into the London market. There are pros and cons. The cons are the things that TfL would review, i.e. taxi ranks and things like that, and the possibility of losing our pseudo-iconic status. The pros are choice. That's basically it. The pros are choice.
Yeah. I'd agree, really. I was just trying to load up something that Mr. Stanley Roth sent to me. Sorry, it made me realise. But basically, along the lines, they tried getting rid of the conditions of fitness, the turning circle, I think in the 1920s. Remember, it came in 1906.
Yeah.
And they've tried getting rid of it before, really. So it's like, if you fully play devil's advocate and get rid of it, what would we be left with? the other cool thing about, I guess, the conditions of fitness, we might say, yeah, it's archaic, it's old, do we even really need it? But also, it's one of those things that
It's a standard.
In a world, it's a standard, and in a world where we're losing so many things from society, like, you know, the Bobby on the beat, just hallmarks of kind of Britishness, that stiff upper lip, that going a little bit further and beyond, you know, the knowledge is one of those. And I think that's then linked to that. So if we lose that, I think that's where the big argument comes from. It's then linked to all those other things.
Yeah.
But not because of the thing. That's the weird thing about it. Not because the turning circle is anything special and it's that specifically that we want to keep. It's because it's linked to everything else.
Well, the problem comes is if we lose the turning circle, what do we lose next?
Yes.
You know, what part of the conditions of fitness are other manufacturers going to say, well, if you don't need the turning circle, you don't need that either. And that means we can produce a vehicle that could be used as a London taxi. So I think there is a reason for upkeeping standards as they are. But, you know, people will argue that they need a choice. And when you've got a monopoly in a market, it does pose some problems, stagnation with manufacturers, which is what happened with LTI back in the 80s, where until the MetroCab came out, they didn't really make any improvements to the cab at all. It was just, that's it. You can buy one, you can go on the waiting list to buy one, which is what it was like back then. You know, you want to buy a cab? Yeah, the waiting list is over there. Go and join the queue. And they never really improved it. They only made changes when things became unavailable anymore, you know, like changing engines and things like that. It was, oh, like, we're not building that engine anymore, so you're going to have to go and find a new engine. So I think when the MetroCab came round, it sort of gave LTI a bit of a kick up the backside to make some improvements to the FX4 at the time. So we don't want to end up in that position again, where we end up with a manufacturer, a sole manufacturer that stagnates and doesn't improve the vehicle. But obviously LEVC are stating that they are going to improve it, and only time will tell as to what we are offered finally.
In the near future, whatever near future means. Is that this year? Is that next year? The year after?
Well, it's supposed to be next year, isn't it? They always said 2027 was when the new vehicle was going to come out, and that they would build TXEs to order. But with the worrying thing is, for me anyway, they said they would build them to order, but drivers are phoning both Brewery Road and Ascot's and saying, you know, have you got any new cabs available? And they're being told, give us a call after Christmas. So if those buildings to order, it would be, yeah, we can order one. You know, you are looking at 2 or 3 months, you know, wait for it, but we can order it for you. But you're going to have to put a deposit down or whatever, because we don't want to build a cab and then you'd change your mind. But they're not. I haven't heard of anyone being offered that option. So are they really building them to order? That's the problem. So yeah, I mean, making a statement is all well and good. I want to see some evidence. Yeah, I want to see some evidence as to
see a nice flashy mock-up of some sort.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, they're building a vehicle that we primarily use for our business. It would be nice to be consulted as to what we want in a taxi, rather than just maybe picking 2 or 3 drivers that may want totally different things from the vehicle they drive. It'd be nice to be consulted.
Let's get off the plane at the airport and then you go speak to a driver at the airport what they want.
Yeah.
Faster horses.
Yeah, I mean, even if I knew someone that had been consulted, you know, it'd be nice. Yeah, I haven't. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts as to what you think, whether the MaxiCab should be allowed into London or whether it should not be allowed into London. I feel that this is going to be an ongoing saga for quite some time to come, and an ongoing discussion with various people in the trade as to whether it should be allowed or shouldn't be allowed. What is the icon? What isn't the icon? You know, I was always of the impression that the driver was the icon, but, you know, listening to Trevor and Paul the other day on the Whizzam podcast, and what you said earlier, I think it's a combination of the two, the vehicle and the driver, and the standards, to be honest with you. You know, the knowledge, the conditions of fitness, the vehicle, the driver, it's the whole thing, the whole sphere, which is what makes the icon. But yeah, interested to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification for our videos, because we've reached 4,000 view hours, which means we are eligible to join the YouTube Partner Program. Only problem is we haven't got the number of subscribers yet. So we need more subscribers. So don't forget to hit that button down below and subscribe to us, because we'd really like to see you back again.
And Jamie wants to be able to fund all this stuff that's going out his back pocket, such as Riverside subscriptions, web hosting, etc.
Yeah. So until the next episode, and don't forget we're twice weekly at the moment, we will bid you farewell. And I've been Jamie the Cabby.
Tom the taxi driver. Goodbye.
See you soon. Bye.